We'll call to order the Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, November 16th, 2023. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Kroll, will you please take care of the oath of office, please?
Yeah, so we have a new commissioner joining us, Dave No, so I'll just issue this oath of office that we have to do. So I can have you stand and raise your right hand. So I, your name,
I, David Nell,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
and discharge faithfully
and discharge faithfully
the duties of a planning commissioner
the duties of a planning commissioner
for the city of Coon Rapids
for the city of Coon Rapids
in the county of Anoka
in the county of Anoka
and state of Minnesota
and state of Minnesota
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
And Mr. Kroll, will you now call the roll?
Yep, Commissioner Knobloch,
Here.
Commissioner No,
Here.
Commissioner Heikela,
Here.
Commissioner Casey,
Here.
Commissioner Schmolke is not present, Commissioner Geisler,
Here.
and Chair Schwartz.
Here. All right, our first order of business this evening then is to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Casey. Any additions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the agenda is adopted. Next, we have the approval of the minutes of our October 19th, 2023 meeting.
Chair Schwartz,
Commissioner Knobloch,
I move that we approve minutes from the previous meeting of October 19th. Second.
motion by Knobloch, second by Heichel. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And minutes are adopted. All right, our first order of new business this evening is an overview of dimensional design and use flexibility. Mr. Kroll.
Great, thank you, Commission. So yeah, I just wanted to give a quick overview of our dimensional design and use flexibility. Both of the site plans that you see tonight are requesting dimensional flexibility. So I think just as a learning opportunity for our new planning commissioner, Dave No, and then just as a refresher, I think for the board, just want to give some additional context before diving into the planning cases. So we're kind of Coon Rapids Boulevard is the city's longest commercial corridor. It's home to many major anchors in the city, including Mercy Hospital and Anoka Ramsey Community College. And I think has long been identified as a priority redevelopment opportunity for new residential and commercial development. So this kind of spans, I'm sure it predates even this plan, but just kind of more recent plans are, we had the Coon Rapids Boulevard Framework Plan. Kind of through that, we have our port districts that have their own individual kind of small area plans to kind of help guide redevelopment and creating a more district feel along Coon Rapids Boulevard. So on the zoning piece of it, we have special use districts and then an overlay district. So there are 4 port districts. They're meant to be kind of mixed use, allowing different kinds of commercial, office, residential uses. So the 4 are Port Wellness, which surrounds the Mercy Hospital campus, Port Campus Square, that surrounds the city's new ice arena, Port Riverwalk, kind of just south of Egret. Kind of the recent project there is the kind of 100+ single-family homes from Centra Homes, and then the Port Evergreen district, which is kind of a office commercial area adjacent to the industrial park on the south end of the city. So we have those four kind of port districts, and then along the entire Coon Rapids Boulevard corridor, we have the River Rapids Overlay District, and that really guides a lot of the design, kind of open space amenities, kind of, again, to give you that kind of more urban design, creating a district along the entire boulevard, and helps kind of connect to those areas between the nodes. So one of the tools in both of those port districts and that overlay district is that the city, or the planning commission, can recommend and the city council approve different types of flexibility for those developments. And so it's a tool to encourage development or revitalization that may otherwise be difficult due to unique site challenges, maybe it's current zoning regulations, kind of changes in market trends. There's a lot of different types of uses and parcels along the boulevard, and so it's kind of hard to capture everything in one kind of code. And so this just gives us some flexibility to kind of respond to development. So the three flexibility tools that we have are the dimensional flexibility. So those relate to things like building height, setbacks, minimum open space requirements, minimum parking. So both of the projects tonight will have items related to dimensional flexibility. We also have design standard flexibility, so that's really more on the building itself, so kind of building massing, different use of building materials, outdoor spaces, landscaping, lighting, those sorts of things. And then we have use flexibility that allows you to grant a use that's not otherwise permitted by the zoning code in those districts or along the boulevard. This isn't all of the examples, but I just picked out kind of 4 recent examples to kind of give you an idea of the range of when flexibility has been used. So most recently, we had the charter school project this year, but then in 2022, CR Crossing, or CR Flats 2 at the time, was granted use flexibility to allow 51 units an acre, when our code has a maximum of 50 units an acre. They received dimensional flexibility to allow a 1.49 parking ratio, and received dimensional flexibility for a setback from Blackfoot Street. As you'll see in some of these other projects, we require a 20-foot maximum setback from local streets, and here that one was a little further back than 20 feet. Another example of the U-Haul's latest addition on their campus received use flexibility for their U-Box concept that I think Scott had kind of classified as a warehouse use that wasn't outright permitted in the zoning code. The Dollar General received design flexibility to allow less than 60% glass on its facade, which is one of those design requirements we have in the overlay. And then finally, the Port Riverwalk project that I mentioned received use flexibility to allow single-family detached homes and to allow those actually at a density lower than what our port districts kind of guide, and then received design flexibility for narrower setbacks kind of between the homes, and they're kind of on smaller lots. So those are just to give you some examples of other projects and when we've used that. So I don't know if there were any quick questions or comments on that, but just wanted to give a little context there.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Commissioner, any questions? No? All right. Then we'll move on to our first case, which is planning case 23-17, a site plan for a retail center at 2825 Coon Rapids Boulevard Northwest. Hung Lai Architect. Mr. Kroll.
All right. Yeah, so the site we're talking about in this case is at 2825 Coon Rapids Boulevard. That is in our Port Campus Square zoning district and then in the River Rapids overlay district. The applicant is proposing a new 8,375 square foot retail center on an approximately 1 acre site. The site currently has a vacant gas service station and a detached car wash facility that would be removed. And this proposal would then redevelop that site with the new retail center, amenity patio, and parking lot. The site would utilize the existing curb cuts on Coon Rapids Boulevard and Crooked Lake Boulevard to access the site, and they wouldn't propose any changes to access. So then in addition to the site plan, again, we have two dimensional flexibility requests. One is related to the floor area ratio of the project, and the second is a setback from the local street that I'll talk about as well. This is just a street view kind of taken from Google to give you an idea of how the site kind of exists today. Again, it's a former gas station and detached car wash. I think most recently it's probably been functioning, I think, as a tobacco shop there, just to kind of give you an idea of what's currently on the site. So then looking at the site plan proposal, they have 5 retail bays kind of ranging in sizes between 1,400 and 2,300 square feet. As I mentioned, there is a kind of patio and amenity space that could be utilized by any future tenant for outdoor furniture. There they'll have the bike racks as well. They are proposing a trash enclosure. You'll notice there is a condition on there just to ensure that the design of the trash enclosure meets our minimum standards to have 3 sides of similar materials and then the 4th side being a gate. So they're showing it there. We just didn't have the exact details on the design. For parking, they're proposing 36 parking stalls where the minimum required would be 34. And then as I mentioned, they're maintaining the existing drives. So vehicles could access the site both from Crooked Lake Boulevard and from Coon Rapids Boulevard. They will be making a public sidewalk connection to the existing sidewalk on Coon Rapids Boulevard. I believe in the site plan and landscape plan, they were showing them in different locations, but I did confirm it would follow what's on the landscape plan, so it's the connection a little bit further east on the building, I think just to help accommodate the minimum landscaping that they would need on the site. So kind of with that, their landscape plan is showing 12 trees, 143 shrubs, and a mix of flowers and grasses kind of throughout the site. And those would meet our minimum street frontage requirements. So I guess I should go back on this site plan. You'll see on the site plan they are proposing a stormwater infiltration basin in this boulevard area along Crooked Lake Boulevard. Our city engineer reviews all of our site plans and then provides additional comments related to grading, drainage, and utilities. So in this case, he made a note, and Anoka County made a note that they don't allow any kind of increase in stormwater runoff into their right-of-way. And so Coon Rapids Boulevard is a county road, so they will have to provide some kind of stormwater management for the runoff that kind of flows towards Coon Rapids Boulevard. So that's something they'll work through with the Coon Creek Watershed District, and they would need approval before we would issue any building permits. It's pretty standard procedure for us. So kind of with some of that, staff did add a recommended condition that any kind of stormwater ponding that may be put kind of in the boulevard area, that's highlighted. We just want to ensure that the minimum landscaping is still being maintained on that site and along the frontage there for Coon Rapids Boulevard. And then we had a second kind of related condition with the landscaping. There is a small kind of sodded area behind the building and along the east side of the building there that we would just want to encourage some shrubs and some other landscaping that's in our landscape standards there. This is the floor plan again, and just kind of has the breakdown of the different spaces and sizes that they have, just to kind of give you that as a reference. And then for the building elevations, this is the west elevation, so this is the view that you would see from Crooked Lake Boulevard. They're using a mix of different colors and materials, so they would have EIFS, stucco, and 2 different types of split face architectural blocks, kind of in different shades of tan that you can see there. And then some other accent materials would include metal awnings and kind of a metal roof cap. And staff felt that the architectural blocks kind of meet the intent of one of the design standards is to have 30% of street facades be some kind of stone or brick on there. Another kind of key design element that we look at in the overlay is two-story expression, trying to encourage buildings to be more than one story, or if they are going to be one story, kind of designed in a way to give the impression that it's two stories. So in this case, the building is 21 and a half feet tall, so that's taller than the minimum kind of 20 feet that we would require. So I think with the height of the building and then the kind of proposed second row of kind of glossed windows kind of meets that intent, or that's the proposed design to meet that two-story expression. This is the south elevation, so this is the view of the building you would see from Crooked Lake, or not, excuse me, Coon Rapids Boulevard. So then looking at the dimensional flexibility, again, we do have some findings that we're asked to make when reviewing those findings. So does the flexibility, is it necessary to respond to site conditions or unique circumstances? Does the flexibility result in gained efficiencies or better integration or organization of uses on the site? Does the site provide significant amenities or buffers that may offset any potential harmful effects? And does the flexibility kind of further the intent of our port and overlay district? So the first flexibility is related to floor area ratio. So to calculate floor area ratio, you divide the total floor area of the building by the total area of the lot. So these images on the screen are just trying to visualize that. If I just kind of look at this image in the middle, so that's a floor area ratio of 1. So to get that 1, if they had a one-story building, they could theoretically build, kind of cover the whole lot in the building. Or if they were going to go to 2 stories and wanted to maximize the floor area ratio, they take up half of the site and build 2 stories. Or if they're going to build a 4-story building, they could take a quarter of the site up 4 stories high. It all equates to a floor area ratio of 1. So in the port districts, for any non-residential use, we kind of guide a minimum of 0.6 floor area ratio. And if you take the floor area of this building, so it's 8,375 square feet, you divide that by the site, which is 43,578 square feet, it calculates out to a floor area ratio of 0.2. So to kind of based on that existing lot size to get to a floor area ratio of 0.6, you'd need a 26,000 square foot building. And it's probably likely that for a building that size on the site would require some other kind of flexibility to meet either the parking or the setbacks or open space requirements. So as an example there, a 26,000 square foot retail building would require 105 parking spaces by our code, which kind of looking at the site is probably unlikely to be able to accommodate that unless you're doing multiple levels of underground parking, which just really isn't kind of reasonable or a feasible approach for this kind of retail development. And then I just highlighted there are some other examples along the boulevard, the Quick Trip service station and the Fresenius dialysis clinic were both approved with a floor area ratio of 0.1. And then the second flexibility is for the setback on Crooked Lake Boulevard. So our port district kind of guides a minimum setback of 10 feet and then a maximum setback of 20 feet from any local or collector street. And here the building would be about 71 feet from Crooked Lake Boulevard. This is kind of in response to the existing site to just ensure that there's logical parking and circulation on a small parcel. We had worked with the applicant pretty early on in the process to see and kind of entertain whether the site could be essentially kind of flipped and rotated if they brought the building closer to the corner. Could they kind of achieve everything without needing flexibility. And it seemed likely that going that route would kind of impact some of the circulation off of Coon Rapids Boulevard in this existing driveway. And it would be likely they couldn't meet the minimum parking and would need or request a flexibility for something else there. So staff kind of working through that and looking at the site, felt that this was more reasonable to kind of design to the size of the site. And this building is closer to Crooked Lake Boulevard than the existing building to the north of this site as well. So the staff recommendation is to recommend approval of the site plan, and we have a couple of conditions listed in your packet, and I'm happy to answer any questions on those specifically. And then we would also recommend approval of the dimensional flexibility for floor area ratio and the building setback. And just as a note for the process, for site plans or any flexibilities in the port districts, the Planning Commission is asked to make a recommendation, and then the City Council makes the final decision, and they would do so at their next meeting. So happy to answer any questions you might have, and we do have the applicants here as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Commission, any questions for Mr. Kroll at this time?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
Mr. Kroll, just a couple quick questions here. With respect to the curb cut on the boulevard, previously we've seen some curb cuts being disallowed in the turn lanes, and as with the redesign of this intersection, the turn lane is now behind that. There is a curb cut just a couple hundred, 200 feet up the way there. Did staff review the need for that existing curb cut on the boulevard?
Yeah, we did, and we always send any plan that is adjacent to a county roadway. We do send it to the county to review before the meetings as well. And I think their preference would be to close that driveway, but because this property isn't being platted, they don't really they aren't enforcing it as much. It's more if something was coming in and they're kind of replatting the project, they can request some additional right-of-way and make some of those changes. I think in this case, because they're utilizing the existing site, we didn't have any concerns or felt like it was maybe a little out of our place on this review to request that.
Okay, and then second question, gas station remediation is always an interesting journey. Has staff discussed that with the applicant as well?
Yeah, we have, and I know that is something our city engineer has been working with them for the last couple of months. There were, even before we brought this to the Planning Commission, we've had a lot of back and forth just to try to get it up to a better place. So it is something they're aware of, that they all have to work through. And that would be something that has to be reviewed and approved before we would issue building permits on a project too.
Thank you.
Commission, any other questions?
Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Knobloch.
I have a question for Planner Kroll. In regards, could you be a little bit more specific or elaborate on the landscaping condition? Are you referring to the water filtration or the shrubs? Like how many shrubs or greenery is anticipated to go in the space behind the new proposed building?
Sure.
Or if you could just clarify on the condition for the landscape.
Yeah, yep. So for the landscaping condition, the first part of it, it was more or less, they're gonna have to do some additional stormwater management. And so if that would involve a pond kind of in this grass boulevard area, it could impact what they're proposing as the landscaping there, that the pond is gonna have to take up some of that space where the trees and shrubs are currently proposed. And so it was just to ensure if that is the case, or there will be an impact, that we still want to maintain, where possible, the minimum number of trees and shrubs. So it might look a little different than what's proposed here, but we just want to make sure there's still landscaping this area in addition to a new pond that's likely needed. And then the second half of that is we do have minimum open space requirements. So I know this is obviously a pretty small open space, and so it's not probably likely that a tree can fit in this area, but we just want to ensure that they're doing some kind of shrubs and some landscaping in this open space area on the site.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Casey?
So, Mr. Kroll, are you saying that the landscaping that would be on the north and the east sides is kind of conditional to what happens out front along the Coon Rapids Boulevard with maybe a pond?
Yeah, it's kind of two separate items. So the ponding, in our landscape standards, we kind of have minimum standards for the street frontage or kind of these boulevard areas along the street. And then we have separate standards for the open space requirements. It's basically any other kind of grass area that's not in a street boulevard. So it's just making sure that if what they're showing on the street frontage is impacted, that they're kind of replacing it elsewhere there along Coon Rapids Boulevard. And then just ensuring the little open space that there is on this site, we just want to make sure is also landscaped too.
It seems like it's a very narrow area, north and east, and that's where their back doors come out,
Yeah.
too. I don't know, is there gonna be sidewalk back there, or just stepping out into grass?
Yeah, there is sidewalk. It's probably a little hard to see on this screen, but basically between the building and what I kind of shaded in red here, that is a concrete sidewalk.
Okay.
So for fire access and things, there is sidewalk around the building. And then it's just kind of a little, I think it's like a 4-foot grass area there. So, yeah, likely trees are probably not feasible to plant there. Be more some shrubs.
Because they won't really be seen much anyway.
Yeah,
Or-
yeah.
I see what you're saying. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, one more.
Commissioner Geisler?
Mr. Cole, just a general question on landscaping. Does the city have any guidance around things more to the tune of like a rain garden that's maybe a landscaping, but it's designed to handle water runoff? Do we have any guidance that we can provide that might kind of fit the ground between BMP and landscaping?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if our landscape standards cover like a rain garden in a terrible amount of detail, but it is something we can certainly kind of work with the watershed and just kind of get their guidance on. I'm not sure what their requirements are when they allow that, or if that kind of qualifies for what they need. But I know it's something our city engineer and the watershed district review in detail and work with the applicant on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Anything the petitioner would like to add? If so, please come to the microphone, give your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Aaron Strand. I am the business right next door called Minnesota Automotive. And I have a couple concerns.
Okay, hold on, sir. Right now, I'm asking for the petitioners, the people with this property. The public hearing will be coming up a little late later.
Okay, I'm just wanted to voice a couple.
You'll have a chance,
Questions,
you'll have a
concerns.
chance at the public hearing.
Okay, so not tonight.
Not, well, yes, but in a few minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Anything the petitioners would like to add? Apparently not. And Mr. Crowe, we don't have any material samples?
No, so what was provided were kind of those colored images in the packet for the materials.
All right, at this time, we do need a public hearing, so I will open a public hearing in planning case 23-17, a site plan for a retail center at 2825 Coon Rapids Boulevard Northwest, Hung Lai Architects. Now you can come up and give your name and address for the record. Limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Again, I'm Aaron Strand with Minnesota Automotive. I'm the auto repair shop that's currently located right next to the the old BP gas station in this proposed development. I don't know if the most. My couple concerns that I have is it looks like the building is going to be blocking some of my signage on my building with the end there. And then the other concern is deliveries coming through. We got to keep that in mind when we're planning this. I have a semi truck that comes through to deliver oil to my business, and we have to. I only have this driveway coming through the business is pretty major for me with semi truck deliveries coming through. So I need to make sure that's, big enough and that we have access to run a semi truck through their parking lot, because that's the way it's always been. So that's kind of my two concern is, one, their building's gonna block my sign, and the second concern is we gotta make sure, for them too, that we could get semi trucks through this parking lot to do deliveries for my business and their future businesses. So just something to keep in mind. Otherwise, it looks like it's got a good start and be better than what's there right now. It's a little bit of an eyesore, so. The other thing is to keep in mind, it's very close to their back of their building, what they're proposing, very close to my property or my leased property, as it should say, but it's, just keep in mind, we want to be good neighbors and we want it to work for both of us.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to public hearing? Anyone wish to speak? Please come to the microphone, give your name and address for the record. Limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Hong Lee. I'm an architect for this project. As far as to respond to the neighbor concerns about the access between your property and my client property, are you willing to want to close this off?
No.
You don't want to close it up?
No, I need it.
He really want to contact with you, and 0% chance he got a contact with you. I want to talk to you. Okay, the building, the eye right now, the dimension, which you still keep exactly the dimension of the eye, driveway, in and out. We're not going to extend the building is not extending any further than the driveway is right now. So as far as the setback on the east side, is a setback minimum requirement by the zoning.
Sir, if we're,
There's no back and forth here, sir.
Yeah. So for the setback is a minimum requirement for 10-foot setback. And the building, we try to push the building as fast as possible, and we maintain the existing driveway from both of our neighborhood.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
My name is Bob Ring. I ran that corner from 1970 to 1999, and I built the service center next door. My question maybe doesn't pertain to this, but when I bought that piece of property, there was an easement to the north going out of there that we vacated to get that driveway in there, because I was running both businesses at the time that we built it. And I was wondering if that easement was still available at 2721 Coon Rapids Boulevard.
Mr. Bucciccone, is there something you can address?
Mr. Chair, I think the question is if a vacated easement that used to be on the north side is still in place. I can't answer that question specifically, but I can say generically, once it an easement is vacated, it's gone. But it sounds like the parties are willing to work with each other on access. That's what it sounded like here. The city typically doesn't get involved in private parties' easements if we can avoid it. So.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak at the public hearing? Last call, public hearing. Close the public hearing and limit comments to the commission. Commission, thoughts, concerns?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Geisler.
2 questions to staff. One, just to clarify from Mr. Kroll, the eastern setback is within compliance with the city guidelines?
That is correct. Yep, it has a 10-foot setback as a minimum, which
Okay,
it
thank
does
you.
comply. Yep.
And then, Mr. Buccione, to expand on your shared access comment or easement access, the property owners could pursue a shared access agreement between themselves if they wanted to.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey.
my concern is the fact that with that access, and we're talking about the one off Coon Rapids Boulevard, is that the one that's needed for a semi? And is that feasible? And then there's also a frontage road of sorts that runs along that block, and east of that block, that runs in front of the Asian restaurant and the automotive shop. And that kind of swings back out onto the boulevard. You can get out that way. Is that impacted, or is that accessible for this semi? We don't know.
Yeah, all I can say, we didn't have any, sometimes like we'll use like truck turning templates to see there. We don't have that for this project. It wasn't something I asked about, what we could certainly get or do. But I guess I'll say from the zoning code standpoint, the drive aisle widths and parking widths that they provide do meet the standard in our code. So theoretically, access can be maintained through the site.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Well, one other question.
Go ahead.
So nothing will be done with that frontage road to make it any more amenable or, connect those properties at all? It will still remain essentially a frontage road? I guess, is that a county question, maybe?
Yeah, so I guess the driveway that you're kind of speaking about that connects the two properties, only a portion of that is on this site. So they're not proposing any changes to the driveways that are going in or out of their site. So that frontage road in front of the automotive shop is going to be maintained, and it would be at the same width that it currently is.
Sure.
And then both of the driveways directly on this site from Crooked Lake Boulevard and Coon Rapids Boulevard would be maintained to what they are right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Geisler.
just some general comments. I guess I have concerns with the drive access onto the boulevard and the turn lane there. It kind of forces a right hand out there or people crossing over immediate traffic within the range of the intersection, which at that point, if it was right hand out, you'd be getting on Crooked Lake anyway, so you'd go out the other side. And even that access is pretty close to the intersection there and also exiting into the turn lanes. Since that intersection's been redesigned, though, both of those accesses are pretty close, with the boulevard being the bigger one. I guess I would just make sure that we're comfortable with the county, that is appropriate. Just in a goal of the gas station, which it has not been for a long time, versus 5 new businesses will drive different traffic flows, which entrances and exits right near an intersection are apt for accidents. So I think that's just a consideration there. The other consideration I have is more broad conversation about highest and best use here. I guess a few months ago, we had a conversation about strip malls being vacant and not being leveraged about a mile away from here. And that was one of the reasons why we approved one of our more recent things with the charter school, was because there was nothing going in. So I guess I'm wondering, is this the highest and best use for this corner to add 5 more strip mall-like units when there are vacancies on the boulevard right, not too far from here? It's kind of a broad question of consideration, considering that the building that is coming in here requires flexibility to fit. That said, I think it's a beautiful building, and I think it, works as what it is. I'm just wondering if that's the right use for this piece of land.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Heikler?
I agree with Commissioner Geisler, his point about there being quite a bit of vacancies, quite a few vacancies along the boulevard there. And so I think at the point, it's probably not something we as a commission can do anything about, but it is something that I think deserves some thought. My other question is kind of about this pond here. If we have the pond between the parking lot and Crooked Lake Boulevard, do we have any places like that in the city right now? Because typically, I think the ponds become rather unattractive quite quickly.
The only one that's coming to mind, I believe, kind of near Mercy Hospital, the Nystrom office building, I think has some ponding that's between the street and the building. But yeah, it just kind of really depends on the site and what's needed and what can kind of fit there, and that's what they proposed.
Chair, sure. Chair, sure.
Are you through, Mr. Crowe?
Yeah, sorry.
All right, Commissioner Knobloch.
I have a question for Mr. Crowe. The stormwater will be, of course, it'll be an underground reservoir or storage container, or in this situation, in this design?
Well, it's the infiltration basin, so yeah, there are some things I think that are done underground as part of it. I'm not a civil engineer, so I don't know all the kind of specifics on the design of the pond, but I know some of the ideas that some of the water can, I believe, kind of pool there. It's in the pond.
And then part B is, with the proposed sidewalk going in potentially along the Coon Rapids Boulevard, does the county, to the best of your knowledge, or is there an existing bus stop there, or is there going to be a bus stop or something there? Because and there's a signage on the corner, I believe. So I'm just seeing these potential variables kind of mucking things up.
Yeah, I believe the bus stop, there is a bus stop across the street at this site, and then for the buses that are going, I guess, westbound here on Coon Rapids Boulevard, it's actually on the other side of Crooked Lake, I think because of the turn lane right there, that the bus stop is on the other side of Crooked Lake Boulevard.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right,
Can I have, Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Heikler.
Just one other thing about this, I don't want to beat on this too hard, but this pond. Can you tell me a little bit more about what the landscaping is going to be? The landscaping that will be right up against Crooked Lake Boulevard. Is that just a row of shrubs? Is that? Because it doesn't look like there would be.
Yeah, so the landscaping that they're showing on the plan here along Crooked Lake Boulevard, so it would be 4 trees right here, these kind of larger circles, and then the tinier circles underneath are a mix of shrubs.
Yeah, I understand that,
Oh, sure.
but on the other side of the pond,
Oh, sure, you're talking about right there. Yeah, that would just be sodded grass there.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said.
That would just be grass, kind of between the road and the pond right there. Is just right now is proposed as grass.
So the ponds serve as, they're kind of a depression, right? They're not necessarily filled with water because it's an infiltration type structure. So we're just looking at a opposite of a berm. Kind of a depression that has to be screened a bit. I don't know how much you can, require of that, I guess, around that pond. I don't know what could be required that would thrive, but it is screened from the property anyway. It's not screened from Crooked Lake Boulevard, but
No,
it's
they're-
screened from the property itself.
There are spots along the boulevard where they're not the most attractive places.
They can deteriorate, whether
Yeah.
they're rock lined or, I agree.
And it isn't going to be, I mean, as you pointed out, Coon Rapids Boulevard is a major part of Coon Rapids. We want it to be attractive, the entire, and Crooked Lake is also, that whole intersection there is significant for the city of Coon Rapids.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler?
Mr. Cole, I guess, looking a little closely at the elevation plans here, the site's about 2 to 3 feet higher than Crooked Lake, roughly speaking, at the curve there. Roughly saying about 872 feet in elevation versus 870 at the curb there, and visually, there's a berm upwards. So this would be a reversal of the berm, and I guess we're showing 3 lines down on each side here, but the fact is, it's already a downward facing slope, so, and there is a sidewalk along Crooked Lake Boulevard there, right along there, and so it appears that they're making a 3-foot depression right next to a sidewalk with no landscaping along that. That does not seem in the best interest there. While the landscaping certainly makes the site look better from the parking lot, it would sort of deteriorate the corner there, especially where that infiltration basin is planned. To staff's credit, if the site was flipped and the infiltration basin was on the interior of the site, it certainly would be much less of a concern. Walking along the back of a building versus walking along an infiltration basin for a public sidewalk does seem a little off. So I know we don't have a plat in front of us or a site plan, or, we've got the building plan here, but I do think we've got, I don't know that this landscape and infiltration plan makes a whole lot of sense compared to what the existing site conditions are. And I'm not sure that it's gonna line up with what we're expecting from a citizenry and what people are gonna drive by every day. When we consider other infiltration basins along the boulevard, specifically, since we brought it up earlier, down the Port Riverwalk development, all of those have landscaping between the boulevard and the basins themselves, even though they're visible from the boulevard, admittedly. But there's at least some shrubs, trees, other screening between the drive space and the basins themselves, and they're a little more interior to the sites. So I would consider that from a landscaping plan, maybe a little more consideration. There needs to look at how we're gonna manage the drainage, especially if there's concerns along the boulevard from the county as well with the BMP stuff. I feel like this is gonna encourage water to drain towards Crooked Lake / the corner there anyway. Yeah, I have concerns about this layout. I have concerns about the curb cut being in the boulevard there. I have concerns about this infiltration basin grading not really adding up with what the existing site grading is. And I have concerns about this being the proper use for this corner, given the traffic it might drive. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, I feel like, in this application, in my opinion.
Chair Schwartz?
Commissioner Knobloch.
I got a question for Planner Kroll. A part, the first part is there any feasible options that this drainage basin along Crooked Lake can be altered or slightly repositioned or moved? And the second part is, with winter coming upon and snow clearing, and usually there's more snow, and snow has to be placed usually along these major arteries, are usually piled up in these infiltration or made into snowbanks. Is that a hindrance, or a benefit? So those are like two questions I have for this issue.
Yeah, I guess for the first part, I will preface I'm not an engineer, so I trust the people that build these plans and make the drainage plans, that they know what they're doing, and this is kind of where it worked on their site based on the grading. You know, can it be moved? I'm sure it can, and then it would probably alter the rest of the site and how it's laid out. So I guess maybe the applicant can kind of speak to different options they might have looked at with the pond or the building itself. And then for the snow banks, I guess, yeah, I just am not as aware. I know on other sites, if there's issues, part of their snow removal contract is that the snow just has to be gone off of the site completely and isn't stored in a bank, and is just removed kind of off-site. So something the property owner would have to work through and kind of make it work for their site.
Mr. Kroll, are you aware of any requirements or limitations by the county as far as allowing landscaping, shrubbery, what have you, on their edge of their property?
Yeah, I'm not aware of their specific kind of policies. I know if you're working in their right-of-way, they do require a permit and review. I feel like if they were going to propose any landscaping in the right-of-way, I imagine the county kind of works with them on a maintenance agreement, so that it's not really the county's priority or would want to maintain landscaping that's not theirs in their right-of-way. So I know that would be something they would just have to work through with the county if they would allow it. So I guess kind of to some other questions or concerns about that basin being right up against the sidewalk, I would imagine that's kind of the challenge there, that it's right on the property line, and with the sidewalk, there isn't really room to put landscaping there, otherwise it would encroach on the county's right-of-way, and they would review that and kind of have a maintenance agreement with them on that.
Commission, any other comments?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey?
I kind of like the setup of the lot with the setback on the lot when it goes north and east. I think it gives good visual approach to it. People on the boulevard or Crooked Lake, you can actually see what those businesses will be. I think the parking's adequate. There could be some landscaping kinds of things that come up, but I would much rather favor this kind of a setup than the opposite, where it sits as a corner to the corner. I don't think that's very attractive, and it would require, well, signage again, but would we even know what was in there? I like the idea of approaching it and being able to see all that. And I know there's retail space empty further west on the boulevard. And these seem like a kind of a good parcel square footage for a small business, whereas the ones where we're talking about back at where we approved the school, those seem like they're bigger spaces that could be filled. So you have a little, what's your usage gonna be, and who can predict that, I guess. But I kind of like the concept of it set on the lot as it is, with some working through of the landscape issues.
I concur in that as far as flipping the building and putting it on the southeast corner, having the backs of the building up near the corner, I think would be a very unattractive visual aspect that I don't think we would want along either Coon Rapids Boulevard or Crooked Lake Boulevard. As far as Commissioner Geisler's comment about the driveway on the boulevard, on Coon Rapids Boulevard being too close, the county, in their comments, apparently have indicated that they've looked at it and they're satisfied that there's enough distance that they're comfortable leaving the driveway open. So I don't believe that that's an issue that we should be that concerned about. I agree most of the traffic is probably gonna exit the northwest driveway out on the Crooked Lake Boulevard so that they have a chance to go north or south or to go east or west onto the boulevard. And the little bit of traffic that might come up, exit onto Coon Rapids Boulevard would understandably know that they have a right-only exit to go west. So again, I don't believe that that's an issue that we need to be concerned with. Any other comments? Do we have anyone willing to make a motion one way or the other?
Mr. Chair, I will.
Commissioner Casey,
I will make the motion, the recommendation in planning case 2317. The planning commission recommend approval of the proposed site plan with the following conditions. And there are 7 listed. I won't read them all, but they relate to.
I'll second.
Okay, very good. And do I make a separate recommendation for the design flexibility? Or can that be included?
It's your motion.
Then I will include in planning case 2317, that we recommend approval of dimensional flexibility for floor area ratio and for a building setback.
I'll second that too.
we have a motion by Casey, a second by Knobloch. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Heikkila.
again, if there's some way that we can even get some verbal commitment or whatever for the landscaping that's alongside the pond, up next to Crooked Lake Boulevard, some way to make that, to maintain it as a good-looking area. for lack of a better way of saying it, I just want to make sure that it stays good-looking, because it is a high-traffic intersection.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
Just additional comment for staff. On the north side of the building, when considering the landscaping, please be considerate of the fact that there's two buildings abutting each other there, and it's on the north side of a building. Not much isn't gonna grow there, so let's make sure that whatever we're asking of the applicant is reasonable in those green spaces there. I would, for what it's worth, I would focus on the easterly side of that green space for landscape requests and along the boulevard.
Good point. That north side won't grow much.
Any other discussion, comments? All right, we have the motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. This is a recommendation by the Planning Commission, and the decision will be made by the City Council at the December 5th meeting. Good luck. All right, our next case is planning case 23-22, the preliminary plat for Suite Living of Coon Rapids, Hampton Companies LLC. Mr. Kroll.
All right, so the applicant in this case is requesting preliminary plat approval to create two lots from one existing lot. So one lot would be used for a new assisted living and memory care facility that we'll see in the next planning case, 23-23. And then the other lot would be used for the existing office building on the site that's currently occupied by Diversified Adjustments. So we're talking about the lot at 600 Coon Rapids Boulevard. This is in our Port Evergreen zoning district, as well as the River Rapids Overlay District. I think I mentioned those pieces. So this is just a kind of aerial of the current site. So like I mentioned, there's an existing office building on the site for Diversified Adjustments. They kind of currently own this whole parcel, and so the kind of north end of the parcel is fairly wooded. Kind of talking with the owner at Diversified Adjustments, they've always kind of held on to this land thinking that they were going to build a second building and kind of have a small campus. And then I think with COVID and remote working, they just haven't needed the additional office space and have been wanting to try to sell off this lot. So the total size of the site is around 6.9 acres. Like I mentioned, well, I guess this is kind of showing where that lot split would be. I apologize on the screen if it's a little hard to see, but kind of right in the middle of the site. Lot 1 here on the right side, again, is about 4 acres. That's where Diversified Adjustments is and would stay. And then the other lot is about 2.9 acres, and that's where Suite Senior Living is looking to construct an assisted living and memory care facility. In our Port Evergreen zoning district, any kind of residential use requires at least a minimum of a 6,000 square foot lot. So in this case, lot 2 would comply with that. And then for any kind of non-residential use, we just say that the lot should be the minimum to accommodate the building and the required setbacks. So in this case, the line is 5 feet off of the parking lot for Diversified Adjustment, which is the minimum setback we would require parking there. So both of the lots would comply with the standards in our Port District. And then this was just kind of an aerial image of that plat to kind of give you an idea of where the new lots would be, and then this kind of new lot line. So basically kind of splitting the one lot into two. So in planning case 2322, the staff recommendation is to recommend approval of the preliminary plat with the condition that they're addressing the engineering comments provided by our city engineer. And again, with plats for our process, the Planning Commission makes a recommendation, and then the City Council makes a final decision on the plat. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Commissioner, any questions for Mr. Kroll?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
Mr. Kroll, just to clarify too, there will be a new setback down on that new dividing line then? Because I'm assuming that easement does not exist. sorry, I meant an easement.
Oh, yes. I guess I'd have to go back in the engineer comments. I don't know if our city engineer actually recommended adding an easement.
It's
there.
listed on.
Oh, is it marked on there?
It's
Okay.
marked on the packet that we did, there was
Okay.
no discussion about it, but I'm
Oh,
assuming
sure.
there's a new easement going on that property line then?
Yes, if it's shown on the plat there, then that's what will be recorded. So I'll make sure to follow up with our city engineer if they have to designate any new easement. We'll make sure like all that paperwork is taken care of.
But otherwise, as far as you're aware, there weren't changes to the easements along the boulevard, because the county loves to do that, so.
Yeah, that's correct. Really the main thing, so they were originally looking at just doing a lot split for this property, and then they did go through the plat process because the county just wanted to basically kind of further iterate on the plat that they have right to access on Coon Rapids Boulevard. So they weren't requesting any additional right-of-way with this plat, but just wanted to kind of have that designated that they don't get access points onto Coon Rapids Boulevard.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And Mr. Kroll, creating a new lot, do we have any park dedication fees required?
No, not in this case. So we've already collected park dedication fees when the existing office building was constructed. And so it's been kind of our process right now. If we've collected it on the land, then we've collected it and aren't recollecting something.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Kroll? Is the petitioner present, was there anything they'd like to add? Please give your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chair, Commission members, my name is Jeremy Larson on behalf of Hampton Companies and Sweet Living Senior Care, 1824 Berkeley Road, White Bear Lake. I'm here to answer any questions you may have this evening.
All right. I don't know that we're gonna have any questions on the lot split. We may have questions when we get to the site plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we need a public hearing in this matter. We'll open a public hearing in planning case 23-22, the preliminary plat for Sweet Living of Coon Rapids, Hampton Companies LLC. Anyone wish to speak to the public hearing? Anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, close the public hearing and limit comments to the commission.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
In planning case 23-22, I move that we recommend approval of the preliminary plat with the single listed condition.
Seconds?
Motion by Geisler, second, was it by Knobloch? Or, no, no.
Yes.
Any
Yes.
further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And that motion carries. This is a recommendation by the planning commission and a decision by the city council at December 5th, 2023 meeting. All right, Mr. Kroll, now we're on to planning case 23-23, the site plan for Sweet Senior Living Phase 1, Hampton Companies LLC.
Yep, so yeah, now we're talking about that newly created lot from the previous plat. So again, now we're talking about the corner of 96th Ave and Norway Street Northwest in the Port Evergreen zoning district, River Rapids Overlay District. They are proposing a 32-unit assisted living and memory care facility, so it'd be 20 assisted living units, 12 memory care units. And they are proposing a phased development, so in phase 2, there would be a 40-unit building on the site. So the site plan for tonight is just for phase 1, so we're just focusing on the 32-unit building and kind of the eastern half of the site. And then in the future, they would have another site plan come before the commission on phase 2 on that 40-unit building. So again, here's an aerial of the current site. So we've just kind of already talked about with the plat. There's diversified adjustments that'll be on its own lot. And then this kind of vacant wooded area is where Sweet Senior Living would build. This is just a view off of Google on Coon Rapids Boulevard, kind of looking southeast to give you an idea of the existing conditions of the site. This is just the phase plan. Again, probably it's hard to see on this screen, so I apologize. But they marked in the parking lot kind of some dashed lines for the phase line. So they'd be constructing half of the parking lot in that 32-unit building in phase one, would have the landscaping and such around that building. But then in phase two, they would construct the rest of the parking lot and that 40-unit building. So I'll talk about it a little bit, but you'll see there's some conditions that staff had recommended just to ensure with this phased approach that in phase one that the parking lot is fully curbed and paved and kind of enclosed. We kind of did this with Silver Star Car Wash and some other projects. I just want to ensure that there's proper circulation and access because there isn't quite a clear timeline on when phase two would start. So some of the highlights on the site plan here, we have a variety of different communal spaces. They would have outdoor patios and spaces for folks living in the facility, sidewalks around all the buildings so that you can walk on site. There'd be the commercial kitchen and beauty shop in the building. They're proposing 28 parking stalls. Our code would require 38, so there is a dimensional flexibility request on the parking ratio for the site. So this is what I just kind of mentioned. There's a condition in there. We'll just want to kind of work with them before approving any building permit to have some kind of plan to enclose this parking lot in phase one. Our fire department did request that there would be some kind of turnaround or something built just to ensure proper fire access for phase one until the entire site is built and you have kind of proper circulation around the site. In the Port District and the River Rapids overlay districts, we kind of guide development to be pedestrian oriented and want to create pedestrian friendly environments. There's currently no way to access the site as a pedestrian from the public right-of-way. So we did add a condition to construct a sidewalk along 96th Ave that could connect to the existing sidewalk on Foley Boulevard. It's probably unlikely or not safe to maybe guide people to cross at a mid-block crossing or an intersection crossing on Coon Rapids Boulevard. There's no existing sidewalk there for them to connect to. But the thought was we could get them to connect to existing sidewalk on Foley. They have a signalized intersection then that they can safely cross Coon Rapids Boulevard if they need to access the gas station or Culver's or something over that way. Landscaping, kind of overall proposing 101 trees, 298 shrubs, kind of various grasses and perennials again across the site. Because it'll be a phased development, they were talking about in phase one, they would try to not touch existing trees as much as feasible, kind of on that western side of the site, kind of construct this first building, put the landscaping around it. Then when they would construct the second building, removing those trees and then planting the new landscaping. So I just kind of put a general condition here that, since this is kind of phased, we're seeing the full landscape plan now, but we don't know only half of it's going to be built now and the other half in the future. Just a general condition just to ensure that when the entire site would be completed, that it's meeting the minimum amounts of trees and shrubs that our landscape requirements would require. Here's an image of the floor plan. So this is kind of Coon Rapids Boulevard, or the north end of this site here is on your left side of the screen. So you have the 12 units of memory care, and then the 20 units of assisted living. Again, kind of commercial, kitchen, beauty shop, kind of in the center. They have different lounges and rooms for different programs and activities and places for residents and guests to be. This is a typical floor plan for the unit. So again, they're about 350 square feet, and then have a full bathroom, ADA compliant shower, and then a kitchenette in each of the units. And each unit is intended for single occupancy. Here's a kind of rendering of the site. So we're kind of looking from 96th Ave, looking north. So Coon Rapids Boulevard would be in the background here on the site, just to give you an idea of how the buildings would lay out. And then kind of the other side. So this is now looking from Coon Rapids Boulevard with that in the foreground. So for some of the design elements that we're looking at in the overlay district, they are proposing roof dormers on the building. You can kind of see on both of the buildings. They would have roof dormers to give that two-story expression that we would require in the overlay. They do have kind of stone wainscoting across the facades, and then a mix of, make sure I have that all correct. So then a mix of materials and colors with LP smart siding, hard shingle panels, and again, that stone wainscoting to meet that 30% requirement. So then, I don't have a material board for this one, but again, there was a kind of an image provided, and I included in the packet to give you an idea of some of the different colors and materials they would use on the building. So this was just some different views again. So this map in the corner is meant to kind of orient folks. So this is kind of, looking a little bit from the parking lot of diversified adjustments, kind of what you would see from the building. And then again, a view from 96th Ave of the building there. So dimensional flexibility, again, like I mentioned, there are a couple of findings that you all are asked to look at when deciding on flexibility. The first one is for the parking. Our current code would guide an assisted living facility to have 1.2 stalls per unit, and the applicant here is proposing 0.9 stalls per unit. Staff felt like additional stalls would result in a reduction of open space and other landscaping on the site, and that this felt kind of like a logical layout for the facility. Parking would only be for staff and visitors. Residents living in these facilities would not own cars and couldn't drive. And they did provide in their narrative, and then I put it in the staff report, kind of their estimated kind of shifts. So they're kind of estimating 3 to 5 employees and 1 to 3 visitors at a time. So we're looking at 4 to 8 different occupants per shift in the building. The city did approve a similar assisted living and memory care project earlier this year at a parking ratio of 0.9 stalls per unit. That was the Norbella Senior Living project. And then their proposal actually kind of aligns with other nearby cities and how they guide parking for this type of use. So I noted a couple in the staff report where a lot of our neighboring cities actually have a lot smaller parking requirement than our current code allows or kind of guides. And then the second dimensional flexibility would be for the setback along 96th Ave. So this one is pretty similar to the previous project and their setback from Crooked Lake Boulevard. Again, we kind of guide a maximum of 20 feet. Here it would be about 50 feet from that street. We felt like if they were going to try to bring it closer, it could disrupt the layout for the parking and to have proper circulation on the site. So it seemed kind of a logical response to this site. This layout does help provide some consistent building edge on Coon Rapids Boulevard, at least, where some more of the traffic or visibility is. And then with this layout, it just provides additional space for privacy and landscaping for residents from 96th Ave as well. So with that, staff recommendation again was to recommend approval of the site plan, and we kind of have a number of conditions in your packet. And again, recommending approval on the dimensional flexibility. So happy to answer any questions you have, and the applicants here as well.
Mr. Kroll, on your previous page there, you showed under recommendations, okay, now you went to page 2 with the other 11, all right.
This one?
Because you just had 6, and we showed 11, but
Oh, yeah, but it was just broken up on two
Second page.
slides.
All
Yeah,
right.
so it's not super tiny print.
thank you. Commissioner, any questions for Mr. Kroll?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler?
Mr. Kroll, two questions. First, the simple one, signage here. This is effectively a two-corner lot with the Boulevard and 96th and Norway. Has staff given consideration of, do we need any flexibility allowance for additional signage along the Boulevard, along 96th, along other areas? You know, I could foresee very clearly a desire to sign on the Boulevard as well as on 96th. I'm just wondering if staff has considered if we need to add additional flexibility there for signage, given the uniqueness of the site.
Yeah, we did look at that. So they are proposing two monument signs. So there would be one on Coon Rapids Boulevard, as well as one on 96th Ave. And I think, kind of looking at the sign code, we would permit that since there's kind of two buildings on the site, that they could have two ground signs. And then in the overlay, we have some more specific standards around it can't exceed 100 square feet, and then the area around the sign has to be landscaped, things in it. It has to be a monument sign and can't be a pylon sign. So the signage that they were showing would be compliant and wouldn't need any additional flexibility or variance.
Okay, thank you. Second question is for Mr. Buccioni. Can we require an applicant to do work on a property that they don't own for the sidewalk? That seems like a stretch for what we can require of the applicant. I am all for a sidewalk to Foley, however, they don't own that property to the south.
There are probably ways we could require it.
Okay.
You're talking about the sidewalk that would go across the diversified property.
Yeah.
Is there a standard 5 or 6 foot requirement in the city for sidewalks?
Yeah, it's 6 feet, so I think
No, I saw
in
both.
the condition it's correct, but I think elsewhere in the staff report I put 5, and I might even put 5 on this slide. Had my Wisconsin Department of Transportation hat on when I worked there a couple of years ago.
I believe 88
That we had a
is
5-foot standard, and maybe it's changed, but it would be 6 feet is the
6 feet,
standard,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, ditch that hat.
Yeah.
I guess just to finish the comment, I have concerns about putting a condition of a site plan for an applicant for a property they don't control. You know, the furthest we typically go with that is like site access agreement, shared access agreement. You need to work with your partners, but requiring them to build something on someone else's land is maybe a little further than we've ever gone. So I guess I've got a little concern there of making it a requirement versus a recommendation or a request that they pursue that.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner, no.
could they do that as part of the lot split? Could they require diversified as part of the lot split to put the sidewalk in?
Yeah, that was something, when staff we were discussing, we felt was maybe like another reason to add the condition here for the sidewalk. I think there's a lot of policy support in our port districts and the overlay district to have that connectivity. And then I think in addition, because they were going to go ahead and platting this, and that it just felt like now is the time to try to get that required. I don't know if Blair, you have additional comments?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Buccioni?
Commissioner, no, you've hit on one of the mechanisms that could be used to make this sidewalk happen. Frankly, I think you put it in there, and if it becomes a legal issue or something we get pushback on, then we'll readdress it as staff and we'll figure it out. But it was a concern raised. I think that legally it can be required, and it's great to highlight it here, but there are mechanisms by which this can get built as part of this process.
Excellent, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Heigl?
Mr. Kroll, do you know how far the existing building is from, what is that, Foley? I mean, how many feet is there? Could you get a 6-foot sidewalk plus 4 feet?
Oh, sure, like you're kind of wondering maybe how long the sidewalk would be, or what the distance of it would be?
No, here on Foley.
Uh-huh.
Is there enough space between, on their property to get a 5 or 6 foot sidewalk and then still have some green space between the sidewalk and Foley?
Yeah, I believe so. I'd have to look back at the plat, but I know, yeah, where they would construct the sidewalk would likely be in our public right-of-way, is where we would have that. And I think when we constructed those streets with the Foley overpass project, they were kind of built to our standard that I think accommodate or plan for sidewalk in the future, so there would be space there.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Geisler?
just minor comment, that would be roughly 450 feet of sidewalk is what they're asking them to do. That's the length of that property.
Any other questions?
I have another, real quick one. I'm not sure if it's for Commissioner, or for Mr. Crowell or for the petitioner, but any idea about what the time might be between phases 1 and 2?
Mr. Chair, Commission members, it's a little open-ended. It has to do with leasing and how well it leases up, how quick it leases up, and then we would start the next phase. So obviously, we'd love to get leased up right away and then start the next phase, but we just need to make sure everything's going properly before we start removing trees and breaking ground again.
No, I understand that, but within a year?
Yeah, I would
Just some sort of a guesstimate?
I would guess. Usually it's, the way we lease these up as well is we don't just open the floodgates and put 32 people in. We move people in phases, making sure our staffing is ran properly. That's the most important part, is the care for these residents. So yeah, it'd probably take about a year.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Geisler?
Could you speak to, have you done a phased approach to other sites?
No, this would actually be our first.
Okay, and the reasoning then would be to just allow for a smoother pace? Or?
Yeah, yep, I would say that, yep.
So do you believe that you'll be able to do the second phase without disrupting the first phase, as far as daily operations?
I do, yep. I think there's enough space available on that site that it should be, obviously nothing's 100% smooth, but I feel like it'd be feasible for sure.
And then, kind of final comment to the emergency vehicle conversation. As far as the phase approach go, do you feel like you have an adequate plan to, one, enclose and finish phase 1, but also provide an emergency vehicle space for?
Yeah, we do, and my engineer's here this evening as well. I don't know if you want him to come up and speak to that, but we feel like we have a good plan in place for that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, we need a public hearing, so I open a public hearing in planning case 23-23, a site plan for Sweet Senior Living, Phase 1, Hampton Companies LLC. Anyone wish to speak to the public hearing? Anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, close public hearing, limit comments to the commission.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
So we saw this in a workshop before. It looked great then, it looks great now. So with that, I would move in planning case 23-23 that we recommend approval of the proposed site plan with the 11 listed conditions in our packet. In
I'll second
addition,
that.
addition, I would also recommend approval of the dimensional flexibility for parking, building setback, and finding that the modifications are necessary due to the conditions on the site.
Good catch. I'll second that.
Motion by Geisler, second by Knobloch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This is a recommendation by the Planning Commission and a decision to be made by the city council at the December 5th, 2023 meeting. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to other business. Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, so for next month, we'll have a rezoning application for 3161 Northdale Boulevard. So it's the kind of Park Dental, and former Edina Realty was in that space. They are looking to potentially rezone that from office to general commercial to just allow a broader range of uses in that building. So we'll have that next month. And then not development related, but just wanted to make an announcement in case you didn't see the email from our city clerk. If you are interested in being considered for chair for next year, you just need to let me know, and then I will share those names to our city manager, and the city council will select their chair, I believe, in the chair in December. So just so if you're interested in that, just make sure you let me know relatively soon.
All right, thank you. And commission, anyone with anything for other business?
So is that it for next month? Is the zoning?
Yeah, it would just be the rezoning, and then we'll have everyone's favorite, a work session, just to go through the code amendments that we discussed. We'll have the red line for those residential code amendments that then we would hope to bring in January and February for adoption.
Okay.
I have a question for Dakota.
Sure.
The new salon beside Schneiderman's, is that functionally open yet, or is it yet bound to be complete soon?
Yeah.
Can't remember its name.
Yeah, Sola Salons, I don't know if they're open to the public yet or not. I know they have a, like ribbon cutting kind of opening, I believe, December 7th, maybe I want to say. So I know they have asked some city staff or representatives to be there. So I know communications, I think, is kind of helping with that. So if it's not open, I would guess in like 3 to 4 weeks, it'll for sure be open.
Okay, thank you.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Casey, second by Geisler. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.